Hello everybody, it's Hater. Welcome back to another Destiny 2 build video. And today we are going to be talking about the Caliban's Hand exotic arms for the Hunter. Primarily dropping from higher tier lost sectors, these exotic arms are without a doubt going to be a permanent addition to my Hunter's builds. With it, we are going to be able to throw an infinite supply of proximity knives that will cause enemies to ignite, indefinitely refresh the radiant buff, spawn a humongous supply of elemental wells for fonts of might, and give us constant super energy. The best part though is that this build will also be relevant after this season ends. But as always guys, if you enjoyed the video and you found this build helpful, the best way to show support is by giving the video a like and subscribing so you'll never miss out on a new Destiny 2 build video. To start off though, let's talk about Caliban's Hand. Its exotic perk, Roast 'em, allows your proximity knife to scorch enemies when it damages them with its explosion, or ignite them when it's a final blow. The final blow could either be the direct hit from the knife itself, or the explosion afterwards. The second half of its exotic perk will also give you constant melee energy back as the knife is sitting on the ground if you happen to miss your target. This is a solid quality of life effect that it has with it, but when it comes to the build itself, this isn't going to be that noticeable at all. The aspect Knock 'em Down is going to be our main synergy for Caliban's Hand. It allows all of our supers to have extra benefits, but the main thing we're looking for is the other half of its effect, allowing us to fully regain our throwing knife whenever we get a kill with our throwing knife while we are radiant. This basically means when we pair the fragment Ember of Torches, powered melee attacks against enemies make us and nearby allies radiant. It gives us an infinite way to gain our proximity knife back. We hit an enemy with the knife, it causes us to become radiant. If they die to the knife, they explode from Caliban's Hand, and we gain our knife back because of Knock 'em Down. From there, that is going to be our bread and butter for the build. Everything else past this point is just gonna help amplify that synergy. Starting off over at the subclass, let's talk about what we're using in my build. Since we're using Knock 'em Down in the build, I'm using Blade Barrage. As we already know, Knock 'em Down is going to increase the amount of blades that Blade Barrage throws, turning it into one of the highest damaging supers in the entire game. For the dodge, we're going to use Gambler's Dodge. This allows us to gain our melee ability back whenever we use our dodge near enemies. Since we are focusing on a melee-oriented build, we want to make sure that we always have our melee ability. So whenever we miss or don't kill with our proximity knife, this is just going to guarantee that we'll always have another one ready. For the aspects, Knock 'em Down, we talked about this already. It amplifies all of our supers and fully refunds our throwing knife while we are radiant and get a kill with our throwing knife. The other aspect though, which could technically be up to you, I personally enjoy using On Your Mark for 3 fragment slots. But you could easily play around with the pocket bomb fantasy that is Gunpowder Gamble. Just keep in mind that you'll have to change your build up and compensate for the missing fragments. Speaking of which, let's talk about the fragments. Starting on the left, Ember of Torches. Again, we talked about this already. Powered melee attacks we land, so whenever we hit anything with our powered melee, aka our proximity knife, it makes us and all of our nearby allies radiant, giving us 25% weapon damage, also allowing us to proc Knock 'em Down. For the next fragment, Ember of Ashes. This just allows us to apply 50% more Scorch stacks whenever we apply Scorch stacks. This paired with the fragment next to it, Ember of Char, our Solar Ignition spreads Scorch stacks to nearby enemies. It makes it where our proximity knife, causing enemies to explode from Caliban's Hand, can cause more enemies nearby to ignite and chain ignite, meaning in the long run, more AoE damage and more elemental wells. For the next fragment, Ember of Empyrean, whenever we get a solar weapon or ability final blow, it's going to extend the duration of both the radiant and restoration buffs currently applied to us, meaning as long as we are getting kills with our proximity knife or any solar weapon in our build, we have infinite restoration and radiant. Then for the final fragment to top everything off, Ember of Singeing. All this does is allow us to gain our dodge back faster while we are burning enemies. practically fixing the one downfall that this build has, where if we both don't have our proximity knife and dodge, we can't do anything. If we happen to have an incandescent weapon and we're burning something after it dies, this gives us a way to give our dodge back faster. Now that we've completely gone over the entire subclass itself, let's move on over to the armor and break down the mods we're using in this build. To start off, the things that I want to make clear is when it comes to stats, of course, high resilience is what you're aiming for. High resilience means you're going to take less damage overall. A solid amount of mobility means you're going to gain your dodge back faster. And then somewhere in the middle for 50 on both discipline and intellect. Why not have super high strength, you might ask? Well, you don't really need it. We're going to gain our knives back instantaneously, and having high mobility for our dodge is basically going to make strength null and void. For the armor energy, we're going to need a few things. At least 2 armor pieces arc and then 2 armor pieces solar. To start off, over at the helmet, this is the first armor piece you're going to want as arc. The main reason for that is for hands-on. Like I said in the intro, we can gain a lot of super energy with this build. Hands-on is going to give us super energy every single time we get a kill with our powered melee attack. Meaning every time we're getting a kill with our infinite supply of proximity knives, we're gaining a bunch of super energy. Then for the mod at the very end, it's going to be Melee Wellmaker. Now on top of our melee giving us a bunch of super energy, it's also creating elemental wells. Moving on down to the Caliban's hand, this is going to be the first armor piece you're going to want as solar. The reason for that is for Explosive Wellmaker. Very simple. You get a bunch of kills with anything that is considered explosive damage, and it creates a solar elemental well. This is going to go for our Caliban's hand, any ignition in general, grenades, or even a wither horde if you pair it with this build. Another thing to note, since we have our Caliban's hand as solar, we can pair in impact induction with this build, allowing us to gain grenade energy whenever we hit enemies with our proximity knife. Yet again, creating another way to gain a bunch of ability energy. Moving on down to the chest piece, this is the second armor piece I recommend you guys have as arc. The main reason for that is for Armor of the Dying Star. This mod paired with an arc resistance mod means we can take reduced damage from arc, solar, and void all at the same time. Of course, later down the road when artifact mods are going to cycle out, this is going to change. We won't have this armor piece as arc and it'll be something else. The mod at the very end though, Font of Might. This is going to give us 25% weapon damage to the weapons that match our subclass typing whenever we pick up an elemental well that matches our subclass typing. In this case, we're creating solar elemental wells for our solar subclass, meaning our incandescent weapons or any kind of solar weapon in general is going to deal more damage, also stacking with the radiant buff. Moving on down to the boots, this is the other armor piece that we want as solar. The main reason for that, Bountiful Wells. Now all of our well mods that we have currently equipped are going to create 1 extra elemental well whenever they proc. So Explosive Wellmaker and Melee Wellmaker are all going to create 2 elemental wells instead of 1, thus feeding into the build and giving us even more ability energy overall. Finally though, at the class item, this is going to be the most flexible piece of armor that you have right now. Since the artifact is inevitably going to rotate out soon, we can do a few things here. For the most obvious option that you have right now, since we have the current artifact, I like using both Classy Restoration and Solar Fulmination. This is going to give us constant healing whenever we dodge, and it's going to cause our ignitions to deal more damage in a larger radius. But for the people that both don't use artifact mods or don't have artifact mods, we can take these off and use something like Bomber or Distribution, and then use Well of Life so that our solar wells will give us constant healing, acting pretty much as a replacement to Classy Restoration. This version of the build, of course, will be usable even after this current season, meaning you're able to use the next season's artifact or the one after it to further enhance it. Overall though, that's going to be the build for today's video. Caliban's Hand, easily one of my favorite exotics in the game right now with how it interacts with Solar 3.0. Let me know down in the comments if you guys have any questions about the build. I also stream over at Twitch every single day at 7 p.m. Eastern. That'll be down in the description. There will also be a dim loadout link down in the description too if you want to copy it for yourselves. But as always, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm going to catch you in the next one. Bye bye.